Okay. Took a little longer than I wanted, but I'm here now. Anyway, um, I mean, I usually never even have preamble, and there most certainly is not any this time, because, it's quite simple. Quite literally just going to read Beowulf, because I had no other ideas on what to stream. Oh, I tightened this too much. God damn it. Yeah, that's it. That's the stream. I'm just reading Beowulf. Because what else do you do on a Monday afternoon? But it is not just Beowulf blank screen. We have ambiance. That there's subtle, very subtle ambiance. Oh, this is it. And let me move this. Okay. Well, chair's too far back. Okay, let's get started, shall we? Beowulf. This is the translated version by William Alfred. If you really want to know the specifics. Otherwise, listen, we have learned the song of the glory of the great king of the Danes, how those princes did what was daring. More than once, Scald of the Sheaf pulled seats in the mead hall out from beneath troops of his foes. Tribe after tribe struck fear into the Heruli themselves. After that time in the very beginning, he was found in a bad plight. He lived to take comfort for that. He grew strong under the clouds, grew rich in men's esteem, until each of those settled around him across the Wales road had to obey him, had to pay him tribute. That was a good king. A son was born to him, succeeding him, young in the courts, whom God sent as a comfort to the people. God understood the wicked hardship which they had lived through before, for a long time without a lord. Because of that, the Lord of Life, the Governor of Glory, gave them honor in this world. Beowulf was famous, Scald's son. His splendor flowered far and wide, even to the lands where the Swedes lived. By his goodness, by making brave and solid gifts, while he is in his father's charge, a young man will bring about that, and his old age comrades to his liking stay on with him. Stand by their prince to the end when war comes. By deeds worth praise, a man will make out really well among any kind of people. Then at the time laid down by fate, Scald, still very much a man to be reckoned with, went on the long voyage into the Lord's keeping. They bore him then to the beach, his own friend of the Scaldlings, they bore him then to the beach his own dear comrades, as he himself had bid them when lord and friend of the Scaldlings. He still had words in his power. Beloved prince of that land, he had held it long. There in harbour lay a prow that swirled up in a ring, the prince's vessel, plated with ice and pulling out towards sea. Then they laid the lord they loved in the lap of that ship, his back against the mast. Many treasures were brought there, jewels from far parts. I have heard of none fitting out a ship more handsomely, with weapons of battle and clothing of war, with swords and with chainmail. In his lap there lay a mass of treasures, which were fated to pass with him far out to the flood's possession. They appointed him gifts of no less price, national treasures, than those had done who at the outset, when he was but a child, had sent him travelling on alone across the shores. They set, besides high over his head, a standard of gold, that the sea as well bare him off, gave him to the ocean. Theirs was a heart that cried out, an anxious mind. No men, counsellors in royal halls, heroes under heaven, can tell for a fact who hauled in that cargo. Then Beowulf of the Scaldlings, that king loved by his people in their strongholds, was for a long time the talk of nations. His father had moved on elsewhere. that lord away from his home, until in turn the noble Healfdene carried on his line. Grizzled and savage in war, he kept the Scoundrels happy as long as he lived. Through him 4 children, all told, were brought into the world. Those leaders of armies, Hrothgar and Hrothgar and Halga the Good. I have heard that one child was Onela's queen, the consort of the Swede who was good at war. Then luck in battle was granted Hrothgar, such esteem for his skill in war that the men in his command obeyed him promptly, until the force of young cadets grew at last into a great band of comrades. It came to his mind that he would have men build a whole building, that great mead house which the children of men have always told tales about, and within it would deal out to cadets as well as to veterans shares of all things whatsoever God had granted him, except for the land which belonged to the whole people and the lives of his men. Then I have heard the story that he laid the task of making that place of national assembly a thing of beauty on many a tribe scattered far and wide across the earth. In due time, quickly for men it came, about that it was all ready, that grandest of whole buildings. He who by his word alone held wide sway that gave it the name of Heorot. Nor did he fall short of his boast. He dealt out golden armbands, treasure at the feasting, the whole soared upwards, noble and broad of gables. It stood waiting the battle surges of enemy fire. Still, this was not yet the time when, because of the murderous attack, the feud between son-in-law and father-in-law was fated to break out. This was the time when the demon of daring who loitered in shadows found it hard to put up with the noise of good cheer he heard loud in the hall day after day after day. The crowding swell of the harp was there, lucid song by a master singer. He had his say who knew how to tell the Almighty. He had his say who knew how to tell the tale of the creation of men in time far off. He said that the Almighty made this earth a field so bright with beauty that the water embraces it. Rejoicing in mastery, he set sun and moon as lights to temper darkness for dwellers in this land, and filled the corners of earth with a fair tracery of branches and leaves. He also put life into every kind of creature which moves about alive. Thus the men of that band of comrades lived happily in the noise of good cheer, until a certain fiend out of hell began to do wicked things. That furious demon was called Grendel, a famous stalker through waste places, who held the rolling marshes in his sway, his fen and his stronghold. A man cut off from joy, he had ruled the domain of his huge misshapen kind a long time ago. Since God had condemned him in condemning the race of Cain, the murder in which he struck down Abel, the everlasting Lord took full vengeance on Cain. He felt no glow of satisfaction in his feuding. Instead, the umpire of fate drove him far from the race of man for that crime. Thence sprang into being all misbegotten things, ogres and malign elementals, and ghouls who prowled the night in stolen corpses, whose giant creatures also, who for a long time waged war against God. He paid them full pay for that. After night came down, he went then to take stock of that lofty house, to see how the Danes and their golden armbands had settled into it after the noble toast they had drunk in beer. He came upon a full complement of princes there, sleeping after the feast. They knew nothing of sorrow, the lame fate of men. That creature beyond salvation, furious and ravening, was ready at once, and wild and relentless, swept 30 noble retainers away in their sleep. From there he went marching back to his domain, gloating over the kill, scouting out the way to his haunts with that full feed of corpses. Then, in the half-light towards the break of dawn, Grendel's skill in warfare was no secret to men. Then, after the feasting, the weeping arose, a crowding swell of tears in the morning. That famous lord, that prince who had always been good in trouble, sat with the joy drained out of him. Majestic in strength though he was, he brooked it. Put up with the sorrow he felt for his murdered noble retainers, after they had a good look at the track left by that fell, the track of a demon with God's curse upon him. That conflict was too hard, too loathsome, and too relentless. There was no very long respite, but after a single night He returned to wreak greater malice, atrocity, and wickedness, and he never felt a moment's pang about it. He was too far gone in those things. Then it was easy to find a man who sought rest in some other place a little more out of the way, a bed somewhere off towards the married men's quarters, when the malignity of the new retainer in their hall was driven home to them. It was proven, the solid truth, by evidence clear as day. The man who had escaped that devil kept himself at a greater distance and with more care after that. Thus he lorded it over them, and fought in the teeth of all justice, one against them all, until that best of houses stood empty. It was a long time, the space of 12 years. The lord of the Scoundrels put up with that bitter provocation, one kind of calamity on another, sorrows that touched almost everyone. No secret, therefore, it came to be known, in songs sadly sung, to the children of men that Grendel had been waging war against Hrothgar for some time. Had one half of a year after another been making attacks filled with hate, wickedness, and atrocity, a campaign without respite, and he had no intention of holding back his fatal malice from any man in the Danish force as an offer of peace, of coming to terms by paying his fine. And no man who was truly wise there felt any call to accept a noble settlement from the hands of that murderer. Instead, the terrible creature, that shadow of death, was bent on hunting down hardened veterans and young cadets alike. He lay in wait and ambushed them. He ruled the misty rolling marshes in that unbroken night. Men do not know where hell's strange creatures stalk on their rounds. Thus, that devil to mankind, that hateful stalker alone, often wrought outrages hard to bear, made Heorot his haunt in the black night, that hall bright with treasure. Not that he might approach the throne where the gifts were given. No award of treasure or show of Hrothgar's love might he know, because of the umpire of fate. That was a great torment to the lord and friend of the Scoundrels, a thing which was breaking his spirit. Many a mighty man sat down with him in many a private meeting. They thought hard about some course of action. What might be best for men of noble souls to do against these sudden and ghastly forays? From time to time at heathen sanctuaries they came right out and promised blood sacrifices, put into words the prayer that the demon slayer should be of help to them in the face of this disaster striking at the whole people. Such was their religion, such was hope among the heathens. They had hell in their hearts, they knew nothing of the umpire of fate, the judge of deeds, they had no knowledge of the Lord God. In any case, they were incapable of worshipping the protector in heaven, the governor of glory. It will go ill with him who must, driven to it by some cruel assault, thrust his soul into the embrace of the fire, not fixing his hope on comfort, on things changing. It will go well with him who, after the day of his death, is allowed to make his way to the Lord, and move by desire towards refuge in the embrace of the Father. Thus the son of Healfdene, fed his mind without pause, with the bitter trouble of that time, nor could that hero, with his gift of foresight, turn those troubles aside. The conflict was too hard, loathsome, and relentless, which had befallen that people. A torment laid on them like fate, cruel as hate itself, the worst atrocity night can bring. Far off in his domain, a noble retainer of high Gaelic, a man of some repute among the Gotar, heard the tale of Grendel's deeds. As to his gifts, he was the strongest of mankind in that day of his life, a man of nobility and of more than ordinary powers. He had them build him a stout boat to cross the waves in. He said that he meant to make his way across the Swan's Road to that king of battles, that famous lord, at this time when his need for men was great. People of foresight did not for a second dissuade him from that expedition, even though he did happen to be dear to them. They urged on that man bent on bravery. They looked at it as a piece of luck. The gallant man who had picked champions, the bravest he could find in the whole nation of the Gotar. Not the least of 15, he made his way to the seaworthy timbers. That warrior, a man very knowledgeable about currents, laid their course with an eye to the shores they would coast. The time allotted passed day by day. The vessel was launched from the waves, that boat in the lee of the bluff. Fully equipped, the men boarded her by the prow. The tides turned, the sea churned against the sand. Fighting men were carrying their bright, handsome trappings into the hull of the ship, their splendid war gear. Soldiers who were shoving off, men on a voyage to their liking, shoving their lashed timbers off. Then across the wave swell, very like a bird sped by the wind, the boat went sailing, collared with foam, till on schedule, on the second day, its well-lashed prow had reached the point where those sailors caught sight of land, sea cliffs shimmering, towering bluffs, spits nosing far out to sea. The sea had been crossed, then, right on course to their destination. The men from the waders, accordingly, leapt ashore fast, moored the seaworthy timbers, their chainmail rang their fighting clothes. They gave thanks to God that this crossing of the waves turned out easy for them. Then, from the embankment, the scowling coast guard, whose duty it was to guard the cliffs by the sea, caught sight of them carrying their glittering shields down the gangplank, war equipment ready for use. Rory pressed him hard with deep concern what kind of men these might be. He then took her for the shore, riding his steed, Hrothgar's noble retainer. With gestures of dignity he shook the spear of his authority above his head. In words of formal parley he put his question. What kind of men are you, carrying arms dressed in chainmail, who have come here this way along the road the currents lay, bringing that towering keel in across the swells of the sea? I've been the border lookout for some time. I've kept watch by the sea in such a way that no enemy has ever been able to do damage in the land of the Danes with the force of a ship. No armed men have ever undertaken to land here in a more public way, and you certainly could not have had any knowledge of permission from our wages of war, of consent from our kinsmen. I've never on earth laid eyes on a noble fighting man of greater stature than one as you. That warrior in the armor. That is no whole soldier, made to look of some account by weapons, unless his looks lie his noble build. Now, rather than that you should proceed any further from here into the land of the Danes and turn out to be spies, I really must know the nation of your birth. Now hear my frank opinion, you men who live far off, you crossers of the sea. Speed is best, making known the places that you came from. The senior man answered him. The leader of the band unlocked his store of words. As to our people, we are men of the Gotar and the household troops of the Hagailik. My father was renowned among nations, the noble leader of armies called Icthau. He lived a great many years out before he went on his way from his court, an old man. Almost anyone who knows anything anywhere on earth certainly remembers him. We have come seeking out your lord, the son of Healfdene, protector of his people, with an honourable end in view. Be so good as to tell us the things we need to know. The mission we have to the famous lord of the Danes is an important one, and there need be no great secret about it. As far as I can see, you will know. If it is as we have heard told as fact that among the Skydlings some enemy, what kind I do not know, a mysterious creature who turns his hatred into deeds, is, in a reign of terror on dark nights, making a great show of malignity, hard to fathom, outrageousness, and downright murder. Because my mind is undistracted, I can give Hrothgar good advice about that. How he, wise and good man that he is, will overcome his enemy. How the heart of waves of trouble will slacken. If any turn in fortune has ever been fated, any remedy been fated to follow, otherwise, forever after that, through a bad time of hardship, he will put up with the disastrous fate as long as that best of house remains there in that noble place. The guard addressed him. From the steed he sat on, there, an officer now relieved of worry. A sharp soldier on guard who thinks straight, has to recognize any gap between words and actions. I know from what I have heard that this is a band of friendly to the lord of the Skaldings. Pass on, wearing your arms and your armor. I will show you the way. I will also have these noble retainers, my comrades, guard your boat against any kind of foe with strict attention to duty. Guards that freshly caulked vessel in the shallows until its timbers with their lashed prow carry this dear man back along the currents of the sea to the wader's shore. It is always granted to men like him, bent on doing good, to come through the clash of battle unscathed. They went on their way then, safe the vessel lay to, rode on its mooring, broad-beamed ship that it was, fast to its anchor. Bull crests glittered above their face guards, encrusted with gold, bright and forged in the fire. The crests kept watch over their lives, bent on battle, their hearts were high. The men hurried, went inland together, until they were able to make out the timbered hall, stately and worked with gold. To dwellers on earth it was the most famous of all the buildings under heaven. In it the great man dwelt. The splendor of it cast a light across many countries. The man brave in battle had then showed them the way to his bright manor house of great spirits, to the point where they might go straight to it. Not the least of soldiers in a fight, he turned his steed and spoke these words over his shoulder. It is time for me to go. May the Father Almighty with a show of favour keep you safe in your exploits. I will go back to the sea, keep watch for an enemy force. The road was handsomely paved with stones. The path pointed the way to those men in formation. Their war shirts shone tough and locked in place by hand. The bright iron of the rings sang in their chainmail. Then they went marching right up to the hall in their terrible outfits. Tired by their crossing, they set their wide shields with the war-proof rims against the building's wall. When they sank down to the bench, their chainmail rang, battle gear fit for soldiers. The spears remained pirates' weapons, ashwood grey from the shaft on. That troop, dressed in iron, was turned into something to be reckoned with by its weapons. Then a proud hero questioned those who were not the kind to back down as a man should question heroes. Where have you brought those plated shields from? Those grey mail shirts, those cruel-looking helmets, that massive spears? I am Hrothgar's herald and officer. I've never seen so many men from foreign parts of such great spirit. I think you have sought Hrothgar out from self-respect, not because of exile for some crime, but out of the greatness of your hearts. Bent on daring, the proud prince of the waders answered. Stern beneath his helmet he spoke these words in reply. We are Hygelac's personal retainers. Beowulf is my name. I want to tell the son of Healfdene, that famous lord your prince, my mission. If he will grant us permission to meet with him, so great as man as he is. Wulfgar addressed them. A man with Wendel blood and men in him he was. His character had been brought home to many a man, his showing in war and his wisdom. O as the lord and friend of the Danes, the Scoundling prince, giver of golden armbands, our famous lord, exactly what you petition with regard to your journey here. And I will promptly let you know the answer which that great man deems fit to give you. He moved off quickly then, to where Hrothgar sat, old and very grey among his company of noble fighting men. Distinguished for his daring, he went and took his stand before the shoulders of the prince of the Danes. He was fully aware of good usage among real soldiers. Wulfgar addressed his lord and friend. Men of the Gotar have made it here. Come from far across the circling stretch of the sea. Not the kind to back down, they call their senior man Beowulf. They are making this petition, that they be allowed, my lord, to exchange words with you. Do not refuse them the right and orders with you, gracious Hrothgar. In their battle trappings they look worthy to be highly thought of by noble fighting men. At any rate, the lord who led those soldiers here is worth something. Hrothgar made his address, protector of the Scoundlings. I knew him when he was a boy. His father was called Icthel, to whose dominion Hrethel of the Gotar gave his only daughter. Now his son has come here for a serious purpose. He has found a lord and friend who will be devoted to him. Besides, soldiers who brought gifts of money from the Gotar to his place as a show of thanks have said that when bent on war he is the gift of the strength of 30 men in the grip of his hand. So far as I can judge, Holy God has sent him to us Danes as a show of mercy against the horror of Grendel. I shall offer him treasures for the bravery in his heart. Be quick about it. Have them come in and see this band of sworn comrades in its full complement. Make it plain to them in your words that they are welcome among the Danish people. Wulfgar then went to the doors of the hall. He proclaimed the message from within. My glorious lord, the Prince of the Danes, has bid me tell you that he knows your noble family. that you are all welcome. Having come here to him across the swells of the sea with a serious purpose in your mind, you were given leave to march in your battle gear. Your war masks on your heads to have audience with Hrothgar. Leave your shields, your wood, your murderous shafts here, abiding the outcome of your interview. That great man arose then, many a hero around him, a majestic troop of noble retainers, so remained there, guarded the armor, as the stern men commanded. When the man had shown them the way, they hastened in formation under the root of Heorot. That man, brave in battle, moved in, stern beneath his helmet, till he stood in the hall. Beowulf made his address, his chainmail glittered on him, that net of battle meshed through the smith's skill. Hail, Hrothgar! I'm Hygelac's kinsman and close retainer. I have undertaken many things which brought me fame in my youth. This business with Grendel came to be known to me with nothing left out of my native soil. Sailors are saying that this hall, this finest of buildings, stands empty and useless to any man once the brightest of heaven goes under. The glow of the twilight is quenched. My men have been advising me, very fine men, wise people, my lord Hrothgar, that I should seek you out, because they know the power of a certain gift of mine. They themselves looked on, when power blood-stained from my foes. I came out of several ambushes. On that occasion I took 5 captive, and I destroyed a whole family of augurs. And at night I killed water monsters in the waves. I came through that hard time with no quarter given. I was taking vengeance for their attack on the waders. They were asking for trouble. I pounded those wild foes to dust, and now with Grendel, this terrible creature, this giant, I feel the need to hold a meeting on my own. Now then, King of the glorious Danes, bulwark of the Skydlings, I want to beg this one favour of you, that, protector of soldiers that you are, lord and friend of whole nations, know that I have got this far. You do not refuse me, and this company of noble fighting men of mine, this stern troop, permission that I alone cleanse Heorot. I have also discovered that this terrible creature, because of some recklessness in him, has never bothered himself about weapons. Therefore, I think it contemptible. May, my liege lord, Hygelac, be glad for me on that account, that I should wear a sword or broad shield with yellow border to this fight. Instead, by the strength of my grasp, I will come to grips with the enemy, and foe facing foe fight for life. On that occasion, he whom death takes must hope for justice from God. I think it likely that, if he is allowed to win out, he will devour the men of the Gotar without flinching, as he has more than once done the best strength of your glorious men. You will have no need to cover my face on the contrary, if death takes me. You will have me, covered with blood. He will act as bearer to my bleeding corpse. He will make the plans for burying it. Stalking alone, he will devour it without a second thought. He will foul the pools of the rolling marsh with my blood. You have no need at all to worry at any great length about the feast to be held over my remains. If battle should take me, send on to Hygelac this best of the war shirts, which protects my breast, this finest of garments. It was left me by Hrothgar. It is Wayland's work. Fate always goes as it must. Hrothgar made his address. Protector of the Skaldlings, you have sought us out, my honoured friend Beowulf, for the sake of fighting in our defence. As a show of God's mercy, your father struck the last blow in one of the greatest of feuds, a hand-to-hand fight among the Wolflings. He was the death of Haethloth. At that time, the nation of the Waders could not keep him, because of their horror of invasion. From there, he made it across the roll of the waves to the nation of the Danes, the Skydlings, with their sense of honour. I was then first ruling the Danish people, and in my youth I kept the struggle of the kingdom well, the stronghold of heroes. Hrothgar was dead then, my older brother, for life gone out of him. Ilfdin's son, he was better than I. After that I settled the feud by paying the fine. I sent old things of great value to the Wildlings on the warder's back. He swore oaths to me. It is an affliction to my heart to tell any man what outrages, what vicious raids Grendel has visited upon Heorot. My household troops, my band of good soldiers, has been sapped of its strength. Fate swept them away in this horror with Grendel. God could with ease cut that crazy killer off in his deeds, over and over again, Men, not the kind to back down, having drunk noble toast and beer, have vowed of the ale cup that they would wait out their time to fight Grendel with the blades of their terrible swords. Yet, in the morning, when the dawn glistened, this mead hall, this meeting place of a brave company, was dripping with gore. Every board of the floor beneath these benches splattered with blood, the whole bleeding as if from the sword. That is why a few were devoted men in these dear force of true soldiers, because death has taken those off. Sit down now at the feast and fix your mind on victory won by glorious fighters, that your heart may move you that way. A bench was then cleared in that hall of noble toasts for all the Gotar together. There those strong-souled men, proud in their strength, went to sit. A noble retainer who bore a well-worked ale-cup in his hand stuck to his duty. He poured out the bright liquor. At times a singer broke into song, clear as light and hear it. A noise of good cheer among heroes was there. No small band of true soldiers, both Danes and waders. Unferth maiden dress, Icogof's son, who was sitting at the feet of the Lord of the Skydlings, he let loose his hidden rancor. This expedition of the great-spirited seafarer Beowulf was a great source of insult to him, because he could not grant that any other man on earth had ever done more deeds worthy of fame than himself. Are you the Beowulf who had the contest with Breca, who challenged him to a swimming match on the open sea, in which both of you, out of pride, put the swells to the test, and for a crazy boast risked your lives in deep water? Not a single man, friend or foe, could talk you two out of that wretched business. You paddled out to sea then, both of you. There you embraced the rushing current in your arms, did a lapse over courses the sea lays, thrashed around with your hands. You shot through the ocean. The sea welled up in big waves. With the winter surges, both of you struggled 7 nights in the water's possession. He won out over you in swimming, he had the greater gift of strength, when in the morning a breaker bore him to the land of the Haethromites. From there, dear as he was to his men, he made his way to his own beloved country, the land of the Brondings, a handsome place of refuge, where he had power over a people, a stronghold and riches. The son of Bainston did, as a matter of fact, completely carry out the boast he had made regarding you. I therefore expect worse results from you, if you dare wait for Grendel at close quarters one night long, even though you have proven yourself so strong on every occasion in the onslaughts of battle and grim warfare. Beowulf maiden dress, Icthaus' son. Well, my distinguished friend Unferth, having drunk noble toast and beer, you have had a very great deal to say about Breca. You have told us all about his exploit. I hold that the real truth is that I had greater strength at sea, had more hardships than any other man. As children, the two of us did resolve, and we made solemn vows, we were still in our boyhood, that we would risk our lives out in the ocean. And we did just that. We held our unsheathed swords sternly in our hands when we paddled out to sea. We planned to defend ourselves against the whales. He was not able, even driven by the waves, the current to swim ahead of me, much less in the heavy sea, and I simply would not swim away from him. At that time, we were simply both together in the sea 5 whole nights until the current drove us apart, and the wind veered north. As crews wore, the water breaking in waves, the coldest of gales, the night growing deep, sea fish was roused. The waves were rough, the temper of the deep sea fish was roused. On that occasion, my tough-hand meshed shirt was a help to me against foes. This woven battle garment worked with gold rusted on my breast. A furious demon of a foe dragged me to the bottom. Savage in his grip, he held me fast. However, it was granted me that I should get to him with the point of my blade, my war sword. By my hand, that attack was the death of a mighty sea beast. Again and again, enraged assailants pressed me hard in the same way. I served them with my good sword, as was fitting. By no means had they the pleasure of feasting on me to the fill. Those voracious monsters. They never sat down to their feast towards the depths of the sea. Instead, in the morning, wounded by the blade, they lay in the flotsam, sworded asleep, so that never afterwards might they put a stop to the voyaging as sailors here and there across the deep ford of the sea. Lights broke from the east, God's bright beacon. The waves let up so that it could make out land nosing out to sea, wide, windy embankments. Fate often protects a noble fighting man whose time has not run out. and his daring proved strong at any rate, it was granted me that I should strike down 9 sea monsters with my sword. I have never heard a song about harder fighting by night under the vault of heaven, nor of a man in worse plight in those currents of the sea. Yet I did get through the gripe of those foes with my life. Tired out though I was with that exploit, then the sea, the current along the shore, the water breaking in waves, bore me into the land of the Lapps. I've never heard a thing about such tricky battles on your part, such horrible bouts of the sword in the give and take of battle. Breca has never yet, nor has either of you ever with your pretty swords done so bold a deed, not that I am boasting of that. Ever though you did happen to prove the death of your own brother, your closest king, for that you will suffer banishment in hell, no matter how strong your wit may be. O tell in all honesty, Ecglaf's son, that Grendel, that cruel, terrible creature, would never have visited so many horrors upon your lord, so many outrages on Heorot, if your purpose, your character, was so grim in a tricky fight as you yourself think it. But he has discovered that he need have no serious fear of retaliation, of an equal show of armed violence on the part of your men, the victorious Skydlings. He takes his toll of the Danish people, he spares none, instead he works his own sweet will, kills and dispatches, and expects no resistance from the Dane, those good spearmen. But now, before very long, I will bring home to him in battle the strength and the daring of the Gotar. He who may will go in high spirits to his mead, when tomorrow the full light of morning, the sun robed in brilliance, shines from the south above the children of men. Then the giver of treasure, grey-haired and distinguished in war, was in a state of joy. The prince of the glorious Danes counted on his help. The shepherd of his people, knew from what he heard the steadfast purpose in Beowulf. At that point there was laughter among the heroes. The sound of it rang sweet, joyous with the words spoken. Wealhtheow, Hrothgar's queen, moved forward. Crowned with gold, she greeted the men in the hall, fully acquainted as she was with their families. Then the noble lady first gave the cup to the keeper of the domain of the Danes, bade him be joyful at the noble drinking of the beer. Dear as he was to people, he partook of the feast and the whole cup with pleasure. That king famed for victory, that lady of the Helmings, then went around to every group of veterans and cadets, gave them the precious flagon, until the time came when she, that queen, perfect of spirit, crowned with a circlet of gold, bore the mead cup to Beowulf. She greeted the prince of the Gotar. Proven wise in her words, she gave thanks to God, because that desire of hers that she might count on some one noble, fighting man for comfort from these black crimes had come to pass. He partook of the cup at Wealhtheow's hands, a soldier fierce as death, then, inspired by the spirits of battle, broke into speech. Beowulf made an address. Ecglaf's son. I made up my mind when I set out on the heavy sea, when I took my place among this band of men, that I should either carry out the will of your people or fast in the demon's grasp, crumple and death. I shall do daring worthy of a noble soldier, or live my last day out in this mead hall. Those words pleased the lady well. Those remarks made for glory by the man of the Gotar, crowned with gold, the noble queen that people went to sit by her lord. Then, after that, words of self-respect were spoken within that hall as before. The people were in a state of joy. There was a rising sound of merriment from both victorious nations, till presently the son of Hilfdene made known his will to go to his night's rest. He had been aware of the attack by that terrible creature ordained for the noble hall ever since they last could see the light of the sun. And night, deepening above all things, shapes like shadowy helmets had come stalking, lightless into the clouds. All the company rose. There, one man took leave of the other. Hrothgar of Beowulf wished him luck, power over the wine hall, and made his speech. From the time when I would raise my hand in my shield, I have never been entrusted this hall of Danish majesty to any man, except now to you. Having hold this finest of houses now, fix your mind on action worthy of fame. Make plain the daring that is your gift. Be on strict guard against your foe, you will not lack pleasing things. If you come through this deed of daring with your life, then among his company of heroes Hrothgar, the bulwark of the Scoundrels, departed the hall. He is minded to seek out his bedfellow Waithenthal, the queen. Thus as men have heard God, the glory of kings, opposing Grendel, appointed a keeper for that hall. He was standing his special tour of duty for the lord of the Danes. He had offered himself as a guard against the ogre. Deeply, indeed, did the prince of the Gotar believe in his brave gift of strength, that grace granted him by the umpire of fate. Then he took off his shirt of iron mail, took the helmet off his head, yielded his ornamented sword to the noble retainer, his orderly, and bade him guard that battle gear. Then, before he climbed onto his bed, that great man, Beowulf of the Gotar, uttered a sacred boast of no mean account. As to spoils of battle and works of war, I hold myself no cheaper than Grendel does himself. Therefore, not by the sword will I put him to sleep, cancel his life, though I have that all in my power. He has no sense of the good ways that he might strike at me, cut my shield through, no matter how stout he may be in acts of wicked assault. But on this night we too will forego the sword. If he dares look for this night without weapons, and then my God in his wisdom, our holy Lord award fame in whatever hand seems right to him. Bold in the battle, he laid him down. The pillar received the face of that noble fighting man, and around him many a vigorous sailor curled up in his bed in the hall. Not one of them thought it would be his lot ever to make his way again to the native land he loved, the nation or noble stronghold where he was reared. For they had heard that before death by massacre had taken far too many Danish men in that wine hall, that the Lord gave the lot of success in warfare to them, comfort and help to the men of the Waders, so that through the strength of one man, through his own power, they all vanquished their foe. It is the real truth that Almighty God has always ruled the race of man. In the lightless night he came stalking, that strider in shadows. The archers slept whose duty was to guard that gabled hall. All slept but one. It was known to men that when the umpire of fate had not willed it, that ghastly assailant might not drag them beneath the shadows, but that men, standing watch in a rage with the foe, waited with his temper upon the outcome of the battle. Then, over the rolling marsh and the banks of mist, Grendel came marching. He bore the anger of God. That wicked assailant had it in mind to get some men in that noble hall in his toils. He had made his way under the clouds to where he knew for certain that golden hall of men was, with its plate and glistening. That was not the first time that he had made it to Hrothgar's home, and all the days of his life before or since, he never came upon noble retainers in a hall with worse luck. Then he went moving in on the mansion. A man cut off from the noise of good cheer, held fast by forged clasps. The door flew in the moment he touched it with his hands. With murder on his mind, his blood was up then. He rushed through the mansion's entrance. After that, he quickly stepped onto the beautiful floor. He moved in with an angry heart. From his eyes, very like flame, there shot a light not pretty to see. He took a good look at the many men in that mansion, that band of soldiers all sleeping together in fellowship, that troop of fighting comrades. Then his heart laughed. When the hope for a feed the fill struck him, he made up his mind, that cruel, terrible creature, that before dawn came, he would have the life out of the body of every single one of them. It was not fate, however, that he be allowed to make the race of men his meat beyond that night. Eiglic's kinsman, that man of proven power, was studying how the wicked assailant would behave in the course of sudden attacks, nor did the terrible creature mean to delay. But for his first exploit, quickly seized a sleeping man, resistlessly tore him open, bit through what cased his bones, and swallowed him in one lump after another. In an instant he had fully fed on the lifeless man, even the feet and the hands. Nearer and nearer he kept advancing. He made a grab at the stout hard man under his bed. The demon reached for him with his hand. He quickly received him with damage he quickly received him with damage in mind, and brought his full weight to bear against the monster's arm. All at once that master of wickedness discovered that he had never come on a stronger hand grasp on this planet. In any other man in the regions of earth, in his heart, he was afraid for his life. For all that, he could not get away from there any the sooner. His mind was eager to be off. He wanted to flee to cover, find company among the devils. His experience there was not such as he had ever before come upon against in all the days of his life. The great kinsman of Hygluck then remembered his speech that evening. He stood up to his full height and got a firm hold upon him. The ogre's fingers burst. He was bent on getting away. The noble warrior followed him step by step. The famous creature was minded to get as far out of his grasp as he could, and flee that place into the pools of the fen. He was well aware that the control of his fingers was in the grasps of a savage foe. It was a sorry expedition that the heinous assailant had made it to Heorot. As to all those Danes, those who dwelt in that stronghold, every bold noble warrior there was a full cup of ale. The mansion shook with noise. It was a great wonder that the wine hall held up under those wildly fighting men, that it did not fall to earth, but it was braced within and without with iron hasps, made by smiths with careful planning. My version of the story at that point, many a mead bench studded with gold rebounded from the floor where the furious men were struggling. The scout encounters had never before thought that any man could by any means break up that splendid bone-decked mansion by any stratagem, wrench it apart, unless the embrace of flame should have swallowed it in fire. Oh. Jesus, my neck. Okay. Oh, hey, Tessa. Yeah. Let's see if I can adjust. Be more comfortable. Okay. Oh, what was it? Time and time again, a strange uproar rose. A frightful terror pierced the Danes, those who were listening to the outcry from the rampart. The god's adversary, bellowing his hideous song, sing a song that rang with no triumph. Hell's prisoner, weeping for pain. He who, by reason of his gift, was the strongest of men in that day of his life, had a fast hold upon him. The protector of noble warriors would not have let that murderous visitor off alive for any payment of amends, nor did he feel that the days of his life were of use to people of any kind. Then, one noble warrior of Beowulf's after another drew old swords that had been handed down to them. Each was bent on defending the life of the prince their lord, their famous captain. Whatever point they could, they did not know when they were putting up that fight. Those tough-minded veterans and meaning to hack at him from every side, to flush out his soul, that not one single choice iron on earth, no war sword at all, could ever touch him. For he had laid a spell on glorious weapons on everything with an edge. The running out of his time in that day of his life was fated to be wretched, and the dying demon fated to journey far into the fiend's dominion. Then he who but a little before had in joy of his heart done so much wickedness to the race of men, feuding with God, realized that his body would not stand by him. The brave kinsmen of the Hygluck had him by the hand, each hatred the other to the death. The cruel, terrible creature was suffering bodily agony. It was clear that the wound in his shoulder was mortal. The sinews had sprung apart, the joints had snapped. It was to Beowulf that the victory in this battle had been granted. Grendel's face was to flee from there, fatefully wounded, seeking his haunts in the cover of the fens with the joy gone out of him. Ever more surely he knew that the day of his time, uh, the no, ever more surely he knew that the end of his time had been reached. Of all his days, the day of reckoning as to the Danes, the desire of their hearts had come to pass as a result of that murderous charge. He had cleansed it then, he who before had come from far parts, gifted with foresight and stout of heart, had saved the hall of Hrothgar in the face of attack. He took joy in his work that night, and that deed worthy of fame. The prince of the fighting Gotar had stood by his sacred boast, had given them to boot amends for the outrage done them all, the grief over insult which they had earlier been suffering, and out of some calamitous necessity would have had to suffer. No small cause for reckoning. Plain evidence of that was when the wild fighters the hand, arm, and shoulder. There it was all together, what Grendel grabbed with under the gabled roof. Then in the morning, in my version of the story, there was many a soldier around the gift hall. Chiefs of various tribes had travelled from near and far to study the miracle, the vestiges of their foe. Nor did his parting from life seem matter for sorrow to a single man of those who was studying his path of retreat when the joy had gone out of him, studying how his spirit had gone, vanquished in his assaults. Doomed and forced to run, he had left tracks of blood on his way from there to the monster's lake. In that place, the face of the water was welling with blood, a dreadful working up of the waves, all charged with steaming gore. It pulsed with carnage, doomed to earth he had hidden. Then, cut off from the noise of cheer in the fen his fortress, he laid down his life, his heathen soul. There, hell took him in charge. From there, veteran comrades returned, as many a young man did from that pleasant excursion, riding their steeds from the lake in high spirits, soldiers and horses at that point. Beowulf's fame was proclaimed. Again and again many a man said that south or north, near the whole region of earth between the seas, there could be no finer soldier under the circuit of heaven, no man more worthy of rule, and they were certainly not finding fault with Hrothgar, for that was a good king. At times men distinguished in battle, famous for their accomplishments, let their bay horses out and gallop, riding races where the lanes through uncleared ground seemed fair. At times the noble retainer of the king, who heaped with honours, had a number of all kinds of old stories by heart. Calling his songs to mind, came up with a new telling of a tale. After a while, the man with his gift for thinking ahead began to play a song about this exploit of Beowulf's, and to tell his story expertly and with good success, varying the phrases. He told almost everything he'd heard tell of Siegmund, of his deeds of daring, much that was unknown, the Wildling's great fight, his exploits in far places, his feuds and his audacities, which the children of men had no certain knowledge of, save for the teller, who was with him when he would tell him something of that sort. Uncle to nephew, such comrades in tight places had always been in every kind of assault. With their swords they had laid low every branch of the race of ogres. After the day of his death, no small renown sprang up for Siegmund. Since a hard man in war, he had killed the dragon, the keeper of treasure. On his own, the prince's son had ventured the breakneck deed beneath the hoary stone. Vittula was not with him. Still, it was granted him that his sword should so pierce the glittering dragon that it struck in the rock face, noble iron that it was. The dragon died in agony. By his daring, that terrible creature had brought it about that he might enjoy the use of the treasure of golden armbands. At his own will and judgment, he loaded down his seaworthy boat. The son of Wales bore bright jewels into the hull of his ship. The dragon melted away in its own heat. Through all the nations of men, he was far and away the most famous of adventurers. Was a lord of warriors because of his deeds of daring. He soon prospered to that extent, after Heremod's prowess in warfare dwindled. His strength and his daring. Once Heremod had been betrayed into the power of his enemies among the Jutes. He was quickly dispatched. The ebb and flow of sorrow had crippled him for too long. He had become to his people, to all his nobles, a lifelong affliction. Even in earlier times, many a man of foresight who had been counting on him for help in times of disaster, who had believed that the prince's son would succeed to his father's nobility, would keep the people well, their treasure and their stronghold, the Skydling's domain, was often deeply worried about the way the stout-hearted man was talking. Because of all these things, the kinsman of Hygelac had, at that point, come to the greatest source of joy to his friends, to the race of men. Wickedness had corrupted Hiramud. I need to take a quick break. I will be back in a little bit. Okay, I am back. I wonder if this is... No, there's like no... There's no real comfortable way to do this because I have a physical bug. And my neck is starting to really hurt from looking down. Okay, maybe I can hold it like this. No. Okay. Keyboard's in the damn way. Okay. That works. Yeah. Oh, where was I? Oh. Wickedness had corrupted Hermod. At times, racing on their horses, they ran laps on the sandy paths. The light of morning was well advanced then, and was driving on. Many a brave-hearted man went to the noble hall to study that strange wonder. Likewise, the king, keeper of treasuries of golden armbands, was making his way in triumph from the women's quarters among a great troop. The queen was crossing the path to the mead hall with him, in her retinue of maidens. Hrothgar made an address. He had reached the hall, had taken his stand on the landing, and was looking at the towering roof shingled with gold, and at Grendel's hand. For this good sight, let thanksgiving be promptly made to the Almighty. I have lived through much that was hateful, many disasters at Grendel's hands. God always can work miracle upon miracle. Lord of glory that he is. It was but a little while ago that I had no hope for ever living to see any cure for my troubles. Then this finest of houses stood soaked with blood, spattered with carnage, and affliction, deeply affecting every one of my counselors, who had no hope that they might defend this great fortress of my people from devils and malignant spectres. Now, by the might of the Lord, this warrior has carried out the action which all of us, with all our foresight, could not encompass. Indeed, whatever lady bore this son into the race of men can, if she still lives, truly say that the ancient umpire of fate was gracious to her in allotting her children. Now, Beowulf, best of soldiers, I will cherish you in my heart as my son. Always make full demands on this new tie. You will never lack any pleasant thing in the world which I have at my disposal. I have quite often bestowed reward for less, ennoblement by treasure to a man below you, a man not your equal in fighting of yourself. Of yourself you have brought it about by these actions that your fame will live forever and ever. May the Almighty repay you for your goodness, as he has done just now. Beowulf made an address. Speak thou, son. We did this fighting, this daring deed, made our dangerous venture against the strength of that uncanny creature. With great pleasure. I did rather wish that you might have seen the demon himself in all his glory breathing his last. I thought to throw him to his deathbed with holds hard to get out of, so that through the grip of my hand he would have to lie fighting for his life. But his body escaped. I could not stop his going since the umpire of fate had not willed it. I never got a certain enough hold on him. Deadly marauder that he was, the demon was far too strong in the legs. That he did leave his hand behind to save his life, his arm and his shoulder. The poor soldier got no comfort that way, however. He will live no longer for having done that, loathsome opponent that he was, tormented by sins. The pain with a grip like fate has strictly bound him in the bonds of death in a place where, condemned for his wickedness, he must await the last judgment to see how the radiant umpire of fate will pass final sentence on him. Then, Egglof's son was a quieter man in his boastful talk about his great deeds in battle, when the nobles had taken a good look at the hand upon the roof. The demon's fingers at each tip each of the bed of the nails was the next thing to steal. Each and every one, the taloned hand of the heathen soldier was a monstrous claw. Every man said that no hard thing, not even tried and true iron, would ever have been able to give the wound that took off the terrible creature's bloody fighting arm. Then it was commanded of all hands that the inside of her turret be furnished at once. On that occasion the men and women were many who were setting the wine mansion. The guest hall to right, shot with gold tapestries, glittered along the walls. Many wonderful sights for any man who lets his eyes linger on such things. That bright building had been badly shattered, its whole interior braced with iron clamps, its hinges sprung apart. The roof alone had come through completely unscathed, when the terrible creature, banished for his wickedness, had turned away in flight, despairing of his life. It is never easy to escape fate. Let him do it who will but. It is never easy to escape. Let him do it who will, but driven by fate, a man must seek out the place that lies ready for every creature with a soul. Every one of the children dwelling on earth, where the body laid close in its last bled with sleep after feasting. That was the time and occasion when the son of Heathdene went to the hall. The king himself wished to partake of the feast. I've never heard of people in a larger company bearing themselves so well around the giver of treasure. Men enjoying glory, they sat down on the bench, took pleasure in the plenty and high spirits. Hrothgar and Hrothwulf, kinsmen among them, gracefully drank of many a mead cup in the noble hall. Here it was filled with friends. The great skydlings had as yet made no shows of treachery. The sword hand of Heathdene then gave Beowulf a golden standard as a reward for his victory, an embroidered war banner, a helmet, and a shirt of chainmail. Many saw a famous sword, a crown jewel, brought before the hero. Beowulf drank of the cup on the whole floor. He felt no need to be ashamed of that rich gift in front of his soldiers. I have not heard of many men presenting 4 crown jewels encrusted with gold to another on the mead bench in so friendly a way. Round the helmet's crown a rim twisted with wine held the face guard on, so that file-honed swords could do that battle-hardened man no serious harm. When as a foot soldier it was his duty to advance on foot against his foes. The protector of good soldiers then had 8 horses with plated bridles led right into the hall beneath the roof trees. On one of them a saddle rested, worked with designs studded with treasure. That had been the High King's throne in battle, and was the will of Heathdene's son to indulge in swordplay. Never did the prowess in war of that world-famous man fail him at the head of his troops when the slain were falling. And then the bulwark of the friends of the Ing bestowed ownership of both horses and weapons on Beowulf. He bade him make good use of them. So nobly did the famous lord, keeper of the treasure of heroes, pay for those battle charges in horses and crown jewels, that no man who is willing to tell the truth in all fairness will ever find fault with them. Forever the lord of good soldiers gave a crown jewel, an heirloom, to each of those on the mead bench who had made the crossing with Beowulf, in order that men paid for in gold whom Grendel had killed before in his wickedness, as he would have killed even more of them, had not God, in his wisdom, and one man's great heart, withstood that fate. The umpire of fate was ruling the race of men, as he still does now. Therefore, understanding is in every way best foresight of spirit. The man who takes joy in the world for any length of time in these present days of struggle must live through much that he loves and much that he hates. Then, in royal presence of Heathdene's marshal of war, song was mingled with the crowding swell of music. The joyous harp was plucked, many a tale recited. When along the mead bench it was the turn of Hrothgar's singer to play for the hall's entertainment. At the hands of Finn's men, when the rage struck, the Danish hero, Naif of the Skydlings, was fated to fall in the Frisian slaughter. Indeed, Hildeburh had no call to praise the good faith of the Jutes. Without provocation, she was bereft of son and brother. Struck by the spear, they fell as fate would have it. That was a sad princess. Not without cause did the daughter of Hawk grieve at what fate had wrought. When morning came, and she could make out a kinsman savagely killed where lately she counted her own the highest joy in the world. War had taken all Finn's noble retainers, save only a few, but he could in no way fight out the battle of Hengist, or drive the survivors from the hall by an attack on that retainer of the murdered prince. Instead, they offered them terms that they would make room in a whole other building, vacate a hall and a throne, that they might have half of it at their disposal together with the Jutes, and that Finn, son of Fortwada, would at the giving of the treasure each day honour the Danes, would make the stay of Hengest's troop pleasant with golden armbands just as often as he meant to lift the hearts of the Frisian people with treasures of plated gold in that hall of noble toasts. Then, on both sides, they gave their solemn word to this firm treaty of peace. Manfully and without dispute, Finn swore oaths to the Hengist that he would govern the survivors with honour in accordance with the decree of his counsellors, that no man there would break the treaty by word or deed, or through some plotted malice would ever demean them, even though, having lost their lord, they were following that lord's murderer, since such had been forced upon them by necessity. If then any Frisian should remind them of that disastrous feud by insolent talk, the edge of the sword would thereupon settle it. A fire was then built, and pure gold from the treasury heaved upon it. The best of the soldiers of the fighting Skydlings was laid out on that pyre. From the fire's edge it was easy to see his blood-stained mail shirt, the swine on his helmet, the boar hard as iron. Many a prince mangled with wounds. Great men had fallen in that slaughter. From the edge of Knife's fire, Hildeburh ordered her own son to be delivered to the blaze, his body to be burned and burned at his uncle's side. The princess was stricken with grief. She lamented in songs for the dead. The war hero was lifted to the pyre. The largest of funeral fires rolled towards the clouds. It roared before the burial mound. The skulls melted, the scars broke open, blood shot out of the cruel flesh wounds. Flame, the greediest of spirits, swallowed all whom war had taken from both peoples. Their beauty was scattered. With their friends taken from them, the warriors then left to inspect their quarters, to take stock of the land of Frisia, its estates and chief stronghold. Yet Hengist did live out one blood-stained year with Finn in full wretchedness. He kept thinking of home, though he could not push his curved prow out to sea. Deep water thrashed with storm. It wrestled the wind, winter bound the breakers along the shore in a chain of ice, until the second year entered the courts. As the windy weather, bright with glory, does even now, always keeping its term. When winter was scattered and the lap of earth lovely, the exile longed to be out of those courts he was a guest in. He would much rather have made plans for avenging his grief than for crossing the sea, if he could possibly have carried off the angry meeting which he had not in mind, if he could possibly have carried off the angry meeting which he had in mind for the sons of the Jutes. Thus he did not reject the way of the world when Hunlaf's son laid the torch of battle, that finest of swords, on his lap. Its edges were famous among the Utes. In that way, cruel death by the sword befell the great-spirited Finn, in turn on his own estate, when Guthlof and Oslof mentioned with grief the savage attack that followed their voyage there, and laid the blame on him for most of their troubles. The divided heart could not keep silent within the breast. Then the hall was crusted with the blood of their foes, as well as King Finn slain in the midst of his troop, and the king taken, and the queen taken. The Scoundling archers carried all the furnishings of the king of that country aboard ship, whatever they could find around Finn's estate of jewels and precious stones. In that crossing they brought the noble woman to the Danes, led her to her people. The song had been sung through the singer's tale. The bright revelry mounted again. The noise of good cheer rang bright on the benches. Cup boys were serving wine from rare flagons. Then Wilfau made her progress, moving beneath her golden circlet to where the two great men sat, the uncle and the nephew. Peace was as yet between them, each in good faith with the other. Unverth, the spokesman, as well, was sitting at the feet of the Lord of the Scoundlings. Everyone had faith in his spirit that he had a great heart, even though he may not have been strictly honourable with his kinsmen in swordplay. Then the lady of the Scoundlings spoke. Drink of this cup, my noble lord, my giver of treasure. Be of high heart, god and lord, and friend of soldiers, and speak to the Gotar in benign words as one ought to do. Be gracious to the Gotar, remembering the things from afar and near you now have in your gift. I am told that it is your will to hold this war hero your son. Heorot is really cleansed. This hall of riches is radiant. Give these many rewards as long as you may, and leave your people and your kingdom to your sons whenever your time may come to fix your eyes on what fate has decreed. I know my Hrothwulf to be so gracious that he will raise these young men honourably. If, lord and friend of the Scoundlings, you leave the world earlier than he, I am confident that out of his goodness he will repay our sins, if he keeps in mind all that we two did before, and he was your child for his delight and honour. She moved along the bench then to where her children were, Raethric and Hrothmund, and the sons of heroes, all cadets together. There the great man, Beowulf of the Gotar, sat between the two brothers. The cup was borne to him, and an affectionate invitation conveyed in words. And to his delight, twisted gold was displayed, 2 armbands, a garment and chainmail, and the greatest necklace which I have ever heard tale of on earth. I have heard of no finer crown jewel in the treasury of heroes since Hammer bore the Brosing's necklace off to the bright stronghold. That jewel in its gem-studded casket. He was fleeting raids plotted by Jormunrek. He had chosen the everlasting way. Hygelac of the Gotar, nephew of the Swerting, had that necklace on his last expedition, when beneath his standard he was defending his treasure, protecting the slain from pillage. Fate took him after he had asked for trouble in that raid on the Frisians. Mighty lord, he had worn the jeweller's precious stones across the flagon of salt waves. It had crumpled beneath the shield into the hands of the Franks. Into the hands of the Franks had passed the life of the king. The clothes on his breast and the necklace with him, soldiers not his equal had rifled his corpse in the wake of the scythe of war. The men of the Gotar had first rights to the field of the slain, the whole took the roar of applause. Wealhtheow made an address. She spoke before all the company. Wear this necklace with luck, Beowulf, my dear young man, and put this garment to use, these great treasures, and make out completely well in life. Out of your strength be bold, and be so good as to teach these boys what they should know. I am keeping a reward in mind for you for that. You've brought it about that these men will esteem you forever and ever, far and near, as far as the sea, the court of the winds ring sea cliffs around. Prince, be happy as long as you live. I will treat you well when it comes to treasures. Holding yourself a member of this company, do right by my sons in your actions, for every good soldier here is faithful to the other. Gentle of heart, loyal to his liege lord, all these noble retainers are in accord, people prepared for anything. Having drunk noble toast, the soldier of this company, do as I ask. She moved to her throne then. The choicest of feasts had been laid there. The men were drinking wine. They were not aware of their fate, the cruel decree given of old, which had gone forth against many a good soldier once evening, had come, and royal Hrothgar had departed for his chamber, for his bed. Good soldiers without number lodged in the mansion, as they often had done in the past. They cleared the benches away. The floor was scattered with bedding and pillows. One of those noble feasters curled up in his bed on the floor, with time running out and his doom upon him. They set their braced shields at their heads, their beautiful shields. There on the bench above each prince were displayed the helmet that towers in battle, the shirt of meshed rings and the majestic spear. That was their custom, so that they were usually ready for battle, both at home and in the field, and in either case, whatever time the need of them befell their liege lord, that was a good company. They then fell into a deep sleep. One came to grief on this bed that night, as so often happened when Grendel was haunting about. Death for his sins, it came to be plain to see, a fact known to many men in many places, that as a result of the sad business of making war, an avenger still listened to avenge princess. Wait, what? It came to be plain to see, a fact known to men in many places, that as a result of the sad business of making war, an avenger still lived to avenge their long-time foe. Grendel's mother, a terrible monster princess, was brooding over her heartbreak. She whose lot it was to make the haunted water her home. The cold streams, since Cain had been the death of his only brother, of his father's son, branded for life by his crime, he had then departed an outcast, fleeing the noise of good cheer among men. He haunted the wasteland. From him many creatures were born demons by a decree given of old. Not the least of these had been Grendel, that savage devil full of hatred who would come upon the men and watch and hear it, waiting for his attack. There Beowulf, a terrible creature himself, came into his clutches. However, he remembered the force of his gift of strength, the ample blessing which God had given him, and trusted to the Almighty for honor, comfort, and help. On that account he overcame his foe, brought that demon from hell to the ground, cast down, cut off from the noise of good cheer, that envy of the race of man had gone off to look for a place to die. And despite all that, here was the mother, ravening and with a grievance on her mind, bent on carrying out a course of action full of grief to avenge the death of her son. She had reached Heorot then, where the Danes in their golden armbands were sleeping all around the hall. A turn for the worse fell to a lot of the good soldiers there the moment the mother of Grendel got in. The horror she inspired was only less to the point that the strength of women the horror inspired by women in a fight, compared to that of armed men with the blade with lashed hilt forged by the hammer, the blood-stained sword with rugged edges shears the bore atop the helmet. Then, in the hall, the hard-edged sword was drawn above the benches, many a broad-rimmed shield lifted firm in the hand. No man remembered his helmet or ample shirt of mail when a sense of the terror struck him. She was in haste when she was discovered. She meant to get out of there to save her life. She quickly got one of the nobles fast in her clutches as she was on her way to the marsh. The man she murdered on his bed was the man of the rank of comrade to the king, dearest to Hrothgar, of all the heroes between the seas. A princely soldier, a fighting man of proven glory. Beowulf was not there, for another lodging had been assigned the famous man of the Gotar after the giving of treasure. A scream rose in Heorot. She was taking down the hand caked with blood which she knew. Trouble had struck afresh, come into being again in their quarters. It was no good bargain that on both sides they should have had to pay with the lives of those did them. The old king, the grizzled war hero, was sick at heart when he knew that his chief retainer was murdered, the man dearest to him dead. Beowulf, that fighter blessed with victory, was quickly summoned to the royal chamber. Not the least of good soldiers, a noble champion, he made his way a little before dawn in the company of comrades to where the wise old man was waiting to see whether the Almighty would ever bring about a turn for the better after this time of trouble. That man who would have done honor to any army marched across the floor with his squad. The wood of the hall resounded, that he might pay his respects in a few words to the leader, the lord of the friends of Ing. He asked if the night had been pleasant for him, to his desire. Hrothgar made an address, the protector of the Scourlings. Do not pass the time of day. Sorrow has struck afresh at the Danish people. Dead. Aesir is dead. Jurmlaf's older brother. My confidant and my chancellor, the friend at my shoulder, when in the thick of battle we fended blows from our herds. As the troops of infantry clashed, as the boars and the helmets slammed against each other. Whatever a good soldier should be, a tried and true prince, that Aesir was. Some reckless murdering demon has been the death of him in Chaos. I do not know where that savage thing beat her retreat, gloating over his corpse, her heart lifted by thoughts of the beast. She was taking vengeance for that skirmish last night in which your rugged holds you killed Grendel with violent dispatch because he had been draining and destroying my people for far too long. He fell on that night condemned to death for his own guilt, and now this second mighty evildoer has come, bent on avenging her son, and has pushed this feud far as it well may seem to many a noble retainer who cries out for the Lord who gave him treasure in his heart, cries out at this blow to the heart so hard to bear. Now the hand lies strengthless, which satisfied your every desire. I have heard counsellors in this hall, my subjects who live in that region, say that they have seen two such huge stalkers through the wilderness holding sway over the rolling marshes, demons from another world. One of them had been, as far as they could make out for certain, in the likeness of a woman of high degree. The second ill-fated creature had trudged the paths of exile in the shape of a man, except that he was bigger than any other man. The people who live in that part of the country called him Grendel. They do not know his father, or whether any of these mysterious demons have been born to him before. They haunt uncharted country, wolf caves, windy ravines, the dangerous trails through the marsh where beneath the shadows of chasm walls, water from the mountains disappear in full flood, deep beneath the earth. It is not far from here, and miles that the pool stands, groves glazed with frost hang over it. A thickly wooded forest overshadows its water. There, every night a deadly wonder can be seen, the fire and the flood. There is no man living among the sons of men so wise that he knows the depth of it. Though the heath-striding stag with strong antlers, harried by hounds on the run from afar, may seek the cover of that wood, he will give up the ghost to yield his life on its bank, before he will go into it to save his head. That is no holy place. From there, when the wind stirs up bad weather, a spasm in the waves rises to the clouds, till the sky gasps, and the heavens burst into rain. Our best chance now lies with you alone. You do not yet know where she dwells, the dangerous place in which you may come upon that creature with so many crimes on its head. Seek her out if you dare. I will reward you with wealth, with old treasures, twisted gold as I did before if you get away. Beowulf made an address. Ecgtheow's son. Do not grieve, you are a wise man. It is nobler for one to avenge his friend than to give way to sorrow. Each of us must live to see the end of his life in this world. Let him who may labour for glory before his death. When all is said and done, that is best when the soul is out of a good soldier. Guardian of this kingdom, stand up. Let us quickly go and scout the trail of the mother of Grendel. I promise you this, go where she will, in the folds of the earth, or the woods of the mountain, or the depth of the sea. She will not escape to cover. Of the kind of fortitude this day, facing one trouble and another, that I expect of a man like you. The old man came to life. He thanked God, the Lord Almighty, for what the men had said. Then Hrothgar's horse was bridled, his mount was braided mane. The wise prince rode in majesty, a guard of foot troops marched with him, following her track through the wood. Her footprints were plain in many places, her trail through the clearings. She had made her way straight across the dim marsh. She was carrying the lifeless body of the best of the noble retainers who governed the domain with Hrothgar. By that time, the son of princes was clambering up steep rock faces, an exacting trail, narrow stretches of path one must take single file. The floating unknown, ravines shooting straight down, many a water monster's pool. With a few expert men, he was riding on ahead to scout the ground, until suddenly he came on mountain trees growing crookedly over grey stone, a wood with no joy in it. Water lay beneath, bloody and troubled. To all the Danes, the friends of the Danes, one noble retainer after another. Every good soldier, it was an agony and a torment for the heart to bear when on that cliff by the lake they came upon a shear's head. The tide was rising, charged with blood. The men stared at it with steaming carnage. The horn sounded time after time, the call to the ready. The foottrips all took their positions. Then they saw many sorts of serpents swimming about the water, uncanny sea dragons making trials of the pool. Water monsters besides, lying on the shelves of the ravine, the kind that in the forenoon often carried out some course full of grief on the sail road. Serpents and wild beasts, they sank out of sight, sullenly and with their blood up. They'd heard the clamour, the war horn blaring with a shaft from his bow. The prince of the Gotar knocked the spirit out of one, its power to battle in the waves so well that it was in the vitals and the hard war arrow struck. It grew weaker and weaker in its swimming in the lake till death was getting it. In a flash, in the waves and the shore, it was hard at bay among the boar spears with their barbed heads. It was brought down by their assaults, and dragged onto the cliff, that strange piece of flotsam. The men looked hard at their ghastly visitor. Beowulf dressed himself in his heroic armour. He was not anxious about his life. The chainmail he fought in, hand-meshed, ample and elaborately designed, would stand the test of the pool. It could shield his body well enough that no grip in battle, no wicked hold by any angry foe could do his vitals mortal harm. Moreover, the glittering helmet protected his head. It would make a stir in the depths of the lake, seeking the burrow and the waves studded with treasure, as it was with chains fit for a prince riveted around it, as the armor had fashioned it in the days long past. He'd planned it with rare skill, had set bores all about it so that no blade of blades could ever cut through it, nor was that which Unferth, the king's spokesman, had lent him the least important help to his gift of strength. Grunting was the name of the blade entrusted to his keeping. Its hilt was a priceless treasure of great age. Its blade was iron, etched with acid, hardened by bloodshed in battle. In a fight it had never failed any man who swung it in his hands and dared go through exploits full of horror. Pitched battle with foes, that was not the first time that it was to bring off a deed of daring. When he made the loan of that weapon to the finest swordsman, having gained some sense of Beowulf's strength, Ekelof's son was certainly no longer of the opinion which he had voiced earlier, drunk on wine. He himself had not dared risk his life beneath that ferment in the waves, dared do the heroic thing. There he lost his chance of glory, of repute for daring. It was not so with the other once, that he had armed himself for war. Beowulf made in dress Ecgtheow's son. O great son of Healfdene, prince among wise men, generous lord and friend of soldiers. Now that I am ready for this expedition, keep in mind what we two agreed some time ago. That if I should lose my life serving your needs, you would always stand in the place of a father upon my passing. Be a protector to my noble retainers, these right-hand men of mine, if battle should take me. Likewise, those great treasures which you gave me, dear Hrothgar, send them to Hygelac. When he fixes his eyes on that treasure, Hrethel's son, the lord of the Gotar, will be able to perceive from the gold to see for sure that I found a giver of treasure, prompted to be generous by his virtues as a man, and took joy in him while I might. Let Unferth know, and let Unferth have the blade that is mine by inheritance, my beautiful damascened sword. Let the famous man have my tough-edged weapon. I will win glory for myself with hunting, or death will take me. After those words, the prince of the storm-weathering Gotar made haste in his daring. He would wait for no answer. A groundswell received the war hero. It was well on in the day before he grasped the lay of the land at the bottom. I think I'm going to call it that, because I'm very lightheaded and my throat is beginning to hurt and my arm is sore from holding the book. thank you, again, to everyone who comes and watches. I'll be live again on Wednesday at 8 p.m. PST. I don't know, I enjoyed this. I'll probably read I'll continue reading Beowulf, at some point. I don't know when next, but at some point. Otherwise that's all for me. Thank you, and goodbye.